Welcome back. It's Wednesday, so it's report day for Group D. And as you can see on my X.com account here, Group D has been announced. Let's start with the weeklies. LFGY, very consistent, always in that high 40-cent range. Chippy, 41 cents. RDTY, 35 cents. GPTY, 31, almost 32 cents. And then we got QDTY, 17 cents. YMAX, 16.4 cents. SDTY, 14, almost 15 cents. OLT, for some reason, this one's, of course, the one everybody talks about. Performance has been good lately. The NAV erosion has dissipated, at least for the time being. Bull markets tend to cause NAV erosion to go away. So I guess we'll see what happens. But YMAG as 7.5 cents. And then for the ones I usually focus on, the single stock underlying ETFs, SMCY very solid here at $1.85 distributions per share. Winter is at 1.65. Misty, the biggest YieldMax ETF fund, $1.18 a share. So everybody looking for Misty, there's the Misty distribution. XYZY, 67, almost 68 cents. AMZY, 64 cents. Aptly, 41 cents. DISO, 27 cents. AIYY, 18 cents. And YQQQ at 17, almost 18 cents. Looking at everything here, it looks pretty good. I'll plug these into my spreadsheet here and show you how they rank up. So as usual, I try to take all that data, put it into my site here. My site's usually just to collect the data and present it in a manner that I think is helpful for people that are looking to invest in these funds or are investing in these funds and trying to determine how they're performing against one another overall. But so for those who are interested, you come here, go to the YieldMax. I intend to cover some of these other funds once I find time, but the YieldMax ones, I've had pretty good data on them. So right now I'm just covering the monthly single stock ETFs. Here's a kind of a summary chart for everything. You can see there's a cumulative dividend, total return percentage for everything. If you want to simplify and just focus on Group D, for example, we can just pull Group D up. And so what we got here is Group D, the initiation date, the prices they came out at, and the current prices or the last monitored price. What the recent dividends are, these should be pulling in the recent dividends that I just covered on the X.com account. And the percent return. So percent return just requires a little bit of like percent of what. So basically I just take the recent dividend divided by the recent price. So it's on a monthly basis. So it you can order it. This is what this bar chart over here is trying to illustrate as well on a magnitude percentage, but it's basically just this column here showing what fund returned the best percentage for the month. So you can see it's SMCY coming in at 8% of its recent price of 23.14. In those ranked order, you can see it's SMCY, XYZY, Misty, AIYY, AMZY, Aptly, and DISO. The cumulative dividends, every month that they report, the cumulative dividends continue to add up, just reporting those there. And then total return percentage. So if you look at the cumulative dividend, add it to the recent price, and compare that to the initial price. So you can see like SMCY, it's paid out $23.65 in cumulative dividends. However, with the recent price at $23.14, you can see that even the recent price and the cumulative dividends does not yet add up to the initial price came out at 50. So it is down a bit from a total return perspective. And that can be applied to everything else. As far as Group D, you can see Misty, of course, the most owned by a long shot YieldMax ETF there's a reason it's the most owned. It's been doing very well. And you see that total return percentage there and that cumulative dividend. Why is the case? But AMZY has been a good fund. So is XYZY actually recently. And the laggards, I guess, are AIYY and SMCY. That said, SMCY has been pretty good lately. So that's just some past performance. Don't necessarily let that dictate how you see the future performance, but those are some metrics to look at. And then as far as just a quick update, as far as what funds, when I say Group Misty's the largest, you can see here, it's the largest by far. I suppose we can try to select just the funds and see just what Group D looks like. So if you have Misty here, just trying to remember what they all are. Misty, SMCY, where you at? There we go. AMZY, Aptly. Let's see if I'm missing any. AIYY, got that one. Disney, or DISO. And I think that's all for the, or XYZY. No, it doesn't appear I have XYZY on this list. I'll have to take a look at that and make sure that gets added. But that might be due to the name change. Perhaps I don't have it coded with the name change. It went from square to block and XYZ, so lots of name changes. Looks like I'll have to get that one added. But if we just look at those ones, keep only, there we go. You can see why the focus is on Misty, because really Misty is the largest fund. The other ones combined don't even add up to half of what Misty is. This is from the single stock ETFs. DISOs, it looks like basically the smallest one. AMZY and SMCY, I guess they're both over 300 million, but nothing relative to that 5.7 billion that Misty's looking at. But yeah, I guess let's jump into Group D. Group D, I got them summarized here. I will start with Misty because it's the most held stock. Let these charts update. So you see the distribution per share, $1.18. It is the lowest that it's been, I guess, for a while. Just seeing if I got any other data that looks interesting. So this down here, I was testing a new Looker. I think it's Google's illustration or software. You can take data and make it visually appealing from an illustrative perspective. Like Tableau better. I just tried this for Misty. You can let me know what you think. But here's Tableau's and here's Looker. But the tab, I guess I like. First of all, from a compare perspective, you can once again see MicroStrategy or strategy, the underlying stocks, clearly doing better. However, these funds have performed very well, reinvesting dividends, adding a significant performance increase if you would have taken all your dividends and reinvested them. We look at a total return perspective, as you probably saw on that table before, the cumulative dividends up to $40.79 for Misty, and the fund price is still over the initial price of 20. So that's always nice to see. Yeah, for all these investments, I always see this green bar just keep stacking, just keep making money. And then I just got the all variables. So purple is your total return. I will say Misty's not the best. Misty days were back in late 2024. Since then, it's evened out. Cumulative dividend keeps increasing, of course. However, the ETF price of Misty has fallen back down to the 20s. That said, it's still above its initial price. So overall, it looks like a good investment. For those who really like to follow Misty, so I got my in-depth chart here, which this shows just your current fund holdings. And so you can see that everything will expire August 1st, 2025. They currently have 4 synthetics established, 385, 390, 395. They got a new one, I think, at 410. If you want to click on these, they'll show you where the synthetic is relative to the stock price, which is the black dotted line. Synthetics are the red dotted line. So you can see the stock price is above 3 of the synthetics. However, the 410, it is below. Doesn't really matter, just that impacts how your synthetic position adds to your overall ETF price. But yeah, overall, they don't have contracts sold until the 412.50 strike. So based on the current stock price, we still got a kind of a little ways to go before we hit those. So there's some upside to gain going into the end of the week. 0 caps from short calls. And even when you do hit the 412 and 415, there's not really a lot of contracts there. So it's really this 420 where you face a decent exposure of short contracts. So for fund holders, it would be really nice for it to run to 420 before the end of the week. But we'll see how that works out. As far as how the fund is made up, ETF price just over 20. Right now, the synthetic and the other contracts are really not really adding too much to the fund either way. The synthetic's got about 15 cents in it per share. And all the contracts we have sold, if you add them all together, they're only dragging about 4 cents on the value, which means if all the contracts were to expire worthless, the ETF fund would probably, and assuming like the synthetic stays the same in terms of value, the ETF price would only go up by about 4 cents. So not a lot of exposure there. Given we are on Wednesday, so there's only a couple days to the end of the week. So some of those other contract values already dissipated. As far as fund positioning, keeps growing, of course, over 5.5 billion shares outstanding, also continuing to increase. That's Misty. In terms of size, I think AMZY and SMCY were the next largest. I currently don't have the in-depth button for these positions yet. I'll add that here shortly if people are interested in seeing the actual or what the fund is actually holding. But AMZY has been a really good fund. Distribution is very consistent. It's actually been on an uptick lately, I'd say. Maybe if you draw an average line, it's been actually doing a little better than average since it's fund inception. And this one's kind of interesting. So usually these funds have a hard time. Maybe I'll zoom in so you can really see this. They have a hard time outpacing the underlying equity. But with the YieldMax fund, if you would have taken your distributions and reinvested them, which in this case is the yellow line, you can see that you're actually, I'd really have to zoom in and see the difference there, but you're above, or if not above, about even with where it would be if you just own the stock. And for a lot of this fund, the yellow line was actually above the red line. So you would have actually been doing better at certain times than the actual people who own the underlying stock by owning the YieldMax funds and reinvesting your dividends. Don't really see that a ton. So I guess this fund is unique from that perspective. And then let's see, price plus the cumulative distribution. This one I like to see you just keep hitting. We're at an all-time new high in terms of total return with the fund at 16.15, your cumulative dividend at 15.61. And yeah, AMZY has been a really good fund based on its market cap. It's not a super widely held one, but it's definitely been a good one to own for those who have owned it. Then the last one I think I'll cover today quick is just SMCY. Only because this fund, I guess for a brief history of it, this fund came out right when the underlying equity got smashed. So it came out and then, yeah, the underlying stock just got hit. You can go back and look at it. I can't remember the exact percentage, but let's see, if you would have had about $5,000 in the underlying fund, about a month into it, you're down to 2,800. SMCY probably went down, 30-40%. Since then, it's rebounded, and the YieldMax funds, of course, did a little better when it crashed because you basically got that payout. And they were better than the underlying equity for a little bit, but then the underlying equity shot back up. And being capped on the upside to a little bit, the YieldMax funds had a hard time catching up. But recently, the fund has been doing better. So for those looking to maybe explore something that's been paying out a pretty good distribution, SMCY might be what you want to look at. $1.82 per share, but this one was really high, but that was also when the share price was at like $50 a share. The ETF price, since then the ETF price has been cut basically in half. You can see that the distribution is not too bad from a percentage basis. I think it was like 8%. Price plus the cumulative distribution. So the cumulative distribution, of course, is in green, keeps adding no matter what the underlying equity or the ETF do. The ETF price, though, is very contingent on what the underlying equity is doing. You can see when the underlying equity fell a lot, the orange bar fell quite a bit. But since then, it's remained somewhat consistent. You can see 26, 29, 25, 28, currently sitting at 23. So paying a pretty good distribution. 23 might be assuming the current trend continues, might be something to look into. Anyway, that's a quick update on Group D. If you're interested in some of these other ones, feel free to come out to the site. They should all be updated. So if you want to just see how your fund's been doing and how the distribution, for example, athlete here, how it's stacking up against previous distributions or how the fund's adding up overall, feel free to come and take a look. But thanks.